recording them. So today we're here to talk about the marketing arm of Command, which includes designs, and designs come in many media. You can do print designs, social media designs, and designs that create HTML or pretty pictures for your email. There goes Ridgefield burning down again. We always have that happen. So that's the whole design feature. And we'll go through a couple of different examples of that. One of the cool things that Designs has is booklets that you can create. It has a pre-listing or a listing presentation booklet. It has a buyer presentation booklet. And now we have access on a quarterly basis to an electronic magazine that you can deliver just by links into your email, or you can post them around on the internet if you so choose. So that's designs. And then campaigns is the design is the collateral material, as it were. It's the content. And then campaigns are how you deliver it. Campaigns include social media posts. They include paid social advertising. And it also includes bulk or blast emails. So we'll go in there and look at all of those delivery methods. Does that help, Jen? Okay, good. Any other questions? Okie dokie, we'll go in here and I'm going to share my screen. And you can see we have several designs up here on the first page. Where am I? There we are. We have this is actually a social media promotion for the magazine. This is the magazine itself. And then this is just a social media post for an open house. And then this was something that I printed like a postcard. I printed it in postcard format, just as a promotion for something that I sponsored a couple of weeks ago. So in designs, and designs is down here, you remember if you open up the red box, you can get all of the definitions of what the widgets are. And we are in designs, which is the paintbrush. If you go to create a design, it will take you to whatever it is that you want to do. And if you want to do the, let's go to a simple one first, and we'll look at one of the simple social posts. I'm about ready, and I didn't get a chance to do this today. I'm going to use one of these formats for my market update summary for the last 2 weeks of market activity in Northern Fairfield County. And you have all of these different applications over here. You have listings. Let me see if this is in here. Nope. I think it's going to probably be in here. We're going to, sometimes you have to just really poke around because there are so many different places where you're going to get information. I've got to think that it's going to be in here. Let's do expert advice. Nope.
Sorry, Deb. When you
Yes?
went into designs, what did you go into next after you clicked on designs?
So I went to create a design. This is create a design. And what I'm looking for is so silly that I'm not finding it. It's in the social. And
What is social wide used for? Where would you put something social wide?
social wide is Facebook. That's the
Not the
Facebook
squares?
format. Facebook format is social wide. Square is going to be Instagram.
I thought Instagram is the rectangular ones.
No,
Sorry,
Instagram is the squares, and Facebook is going to be the social wide.
Oh, I'm always doing the wrong thing. Okay, and it worked.
Okay, here we go. In listings, that's where I wanted to go. So I went to listings and then local expert. And here you see you have a ton of choices and formats for including numbers and putting the numbers for market activity. And basically you want to keep it to a kind of a narrow focus with a point. So let's just choose, we're going to go, let's see if we do social wide and find one of these. That's fascinating. In social wide, it doesn't give us those cool numbers. So we're going to go to social square and do one of these. Now, you can post this also on Facebook, but it's formatted specifically to fit nicely with Instagram. So I'm just going to take one of these simple ones. I'll do this one and pull it up and use it. You pull your numbers. And just my point here is going to, and then you just edit your numbers. And remember this is the typewriter. This is how you easily change the text in any of the spots. So it says 150. And what I'm doing is I keep track on every 2 weeks. I do about 10 different metrics for all of the 9 towns that I cover in Northern Fairfield, as well as the county by itself. So I'm going to put in the county numbers just for the fun of it so you can see those. And it's just edit in this box over here. This is the edit box. And the first thing I have is, I see somebody has a raised hand. One moment. Let me put my number in here and then I'll answer your question. So I have 387 new listings in the last 2 weeks. And I put that number in, I save the changes and watch the, hello. 387. Save the changes. Oh, bless your heart. Why is
Try
that?
enter. Try entering, no?
Save changes is what
Oh.
puts it in there. And
Just cancel and try it again. Sometimes the command freezes.
yes, I think, well, I certainly think that's what happened here. Isn't that fun? I love it. Oh, golly. The one of the points that I wanted to make is if you go out of this before you save it, it won't work. So let's just try it again. I'm going to go into new contracts and I'm going to make the point that we go into the typewriter and there are 360 new contracts. This is contingent listings there we go. That time it went. And let's do this properly and get that number in there. 387, 387. And you want always to hit save changes before you touch anything else. There it goes. It was just thinking. And then
what would you call a new contract? What something that's going CTS?
Correct. That's contingent. Anything that is in the CTS contingent category, that's new in the last 2 weeks. And then the last one that I'm going to do, and again, you see the rhythm of this. You open up the text box, you go to the typewriter, it opens your edit screen, and you put your new numbers in.
I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing where you edit, but I
Okay.
probably clicked on the wrong thing from the beginning. Did
Okay,
you
so
hit
you go to
use?
your text box, see the text box, click on the text box and see when it turns blue around the outside, then it's editable. Then you go to the typewriter right here. And then you, in this box on the right, can you see the box on the right, Jen?
Yes.
Okay, that's where you put your numbers in. And
there we go.
then definitely go save changes before you do anything else. Okay, so now this is where interpretation comes in. This is the last 2 weeks of 2 weeks of activity in the marketplace. 387 new listings, 360 under agreement, and 400 completely sold and off the market. How would you describe that market?
Amazing.
No kidding. October, really? Holy cow. How's the market? Now you can change anything over here. When you click on those words, you get the text box, right? How's the market? I'm going to answer it in this text box down here. And we're going back. Again, the rhythm is open up the text box, go to the typewriter, you see those words, and I'm going to say, how's the market? Totally, and I'm going to make this caps, all caps, totally amazing. And then I'm going down to that and I'm going to say more houses. Here comes Christine. Have, oops, more houses have come off the market than have been newly listed. Now, here's the thing. Let's see how that fits in the box that we have. I don't know. We're going to see. Not bad. And if I click outside of it, does that make a point? Is that okay? Here's a space for your logo. We click on that box and the logos pop up. When you're replacing an image with another image, you go to that box and you just hit the recycle button and it will put your whatever it is, whether it's a picture or an image or whatever, you can, it goes right in there. And then that's just the disclosure. And then you can put, this is your annotation. It's updated as of November 1st, and the data came from the Smart MLS. And I see 2 hands raised. So let's take questions now. And who is first?
I think I was.
Okay, yes. What's
I
your-
was just wondering where we can get that data because I don't have spreadsheets like you do. Is that just on MLS? And can I put in a few towns and go from there?
100%. I can show you this. I don't want to take design time to show you this, but I
Right.
can show you how to do this. And I can put the categories in that I've been doing. I'll tell you, I've always done this on a monthly or a quarterly basis. And my maps coach has me doing it every 2 weeks because right now the market is unknown and a little bit uncertain. And people are saying things about the market like, oh, it's not as hot as it was. would you say the facts contradict that? I would say the facts contradict that. This is a hot market where more things are coming off the market than on the market in a 2-week period. And I've been watching this now for about 6 weeks, and it's not changing. So I think that's important information to deliver, and I'm happy to show you how to pull it. Okay,
Thank you.
yep. And so the next hand, I can't,
So
yeah.
it's, so there's nowhere on here that it says what the criteria is, though, that those numbers are for the last
Well,
2
that's
weeks.
what
and
I'm gonna put.
towns.
So watch this. You can add, if I want to, I can add a text box. I don't need that help, thank you. We'll skip that. Next. Oh my goodness. We're going to add a text box. We're going to go body text. And now here's the text box, which we can move and expand and just start typing in there. So whatever, tell me what you would like to say. So we can say, what's the criteria?
You said it was the last 2 weeks, in what towns, whatever towns, right, October 15th to 31st. Okay,
9, northern, and I'm going to say Northern Fairfield County. And actually what I've just done is the whole county. These are the county stats. Fairfield County.
Okay.
Real estate transactions per SMLS. Okay, save that. And there it is. Now I get to squish it around a little bit, stretch it out, make it fit a little bit better. And if you want to edit how the lines are set up, you can go back in there and keep jiggering with it a little bit so that it looks a little bit better.
now,
Okay.
under new contracts, does that continue to show and under contract continue to show,
Nope.
or just under
Nope.
contract?
It's the brand new contracts. It's
Okay.
just the CTSs. And then because I pulled it, but I pull it both ways, but I think that the relevant number is the brand new contracts in the last 2 weeks. So we're really looking at the activity of the last 2 weeks. The fact is, there were also 360 pendings that happened in those 2 weeks. So that's a lot of transactions. And so what's the message? So let's just go, and I'm not sure why this is making a problem here. I'm going to save this right over here. See the file? You can do edit work up here with these drop downs. I've saved it. And now I'm going to also change the name of this right here. This is the title of it. And I'm going to put 10/16 to 31 market update. Oop. Okay, and then I'm going to say done, and it will take me out of the screen. Should take me out of the screen. All done. There we go. Okay, raised hand. Who else had a raised hand? Anyone?
Oh, I
Yeah,
did.
Debbie,
Donna?
were you under lead gen and then expert advice? Was that where you were?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
That's
because when I
exactly-
went, I went out of it, and then when I went back, I don't have anything but 2 different things. I mean,
All right, watch this. I'm going into social, create design,
Uh-huh.
social, continue.
Okay.
That might not have been exactly right. So stay tuned. Hold on. We'll find it again. I think it was in listings, actually. Diane.
Oh,
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I went a couple of different places.
yeah, that's fine.
Mhm.
Thanks.
So in listings, you can get that market update here, and then it's local expert. So it's listings, local expert. And that's where all of these options are. And you have lots and lots of options. Here's what I will say. Don't obsess over exactly what it looks like. Any of these work, and they deliver a very powerful message. This is a little prettier. And oh, by the way, if you used this one, I'm quite sure you can change the picture. So if you have a seasonal picture or a property picture that you would like to put into it, you click on that. And as long as you see the blue line, it's going to be editable. Now here, what I'm going to do is go over here to this is the edit screen, right? And pull up a new image. And remember, I showed you last week the workspace. You can access lifestyle. Let's do a house interior. That's such a pretty picture with the flowers and the yellow door. But you can access all kinds of photos or pictures. If you want to do something that's just a little different, let's change the picture. And remember, it's like the recycle image to just pop a different picture in there. So you can customize this to your heart's content. Easy, easy. Here I'm going to just change out my logo. Again, da-dum. There it is. And then this one doesn't have as much space for as many words. So it's a little bit, you're going to add the words in the posting that you end up doing. And I'm going to call this a test so that I don't get confused.
So Debbie,
Yep.
I found that if you highlight inside the blue box, you can just edit it in the blue box.
I'll tell you, yeah, you can. And in the these numbers, yes, that's okay. If you have more text than that, it's a little bit of a nuisance to do it that way. It's
Okay.
easier with the typewriter. I'll tell you that.
I couldn't find my typewriter, or I couldn't find the edit box, but we'll do that another time.
Okay, okay,
Debbie, tell me again where you got the images.
sure. We just went out. It's all good. So when you click on the image, and so let's go in and I'll show you the fall magazine, because it will be the same thing. And I'll show
Okay.
you now. Editing on what we just looked at is kind of basic and pretty simple. And I recommend that you start with an item like that. Just play with it a little bit. This can get a little bit complicated. And yet it's the same principle. You're using the same principles over and over. I have as I said, I've already edited this magazine. It comes with, and let's go here. You can see it has 18 pages. And in the original, before it's edited, you have, I think, 3 different covers that you can use. And I think they're very smart to do that, because when you look at them, you'll see that some of them are a little bit more later in the season. This is definitely a November picture, right? You wouldn't send this out later than November. My intention is this is going to go out in the next week.
Did you find that, Debbie?
So you find this, let's go back.
My screen doesn't look like yours at this moment.
No, I'm sure it doesn't, because I'm in my edit screen, Jen, and So you have to go back and find the original source. So I'll start you from the beginning here.
But I don't know how, okay, all right, I'm on that screen. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So you're going to, for this, you're going to go down, not in listings. This is actually in lead generation. So finding the path to the various instruments here is a little bit tricky. You have to experiment, or you have to take notes and remember where we're going. So lead generation, and then if you look down at the bottom, it says personally branded zine. So I'll open up the raw version, and then I'll go back to my partially edited version. So they've done this since the beginning of the year. The first one was called New Beginnings. The second one was called Planting Roots. And the third one was called Making Memories. So this is the fourth magazine for the year. And I'm going to open this one up, and this should be the original for this month, this quarter. And I'll show you what I was describing. Okay, so this is the magazine, and watch what I'm doing. I'm going to slide this frame over to the left. And when I do that, oops. Oh, you know what? Bless my heart. How did I end up there? This is so funny because I was in a class last week and the instructor ended up here instead of where she wanted to be, just like I just did, because we're looking for the full magazine and that's not it. When you slide that frame to the left on the real magazine, you're going to see at least 18 pages. You might see 20 pages. This is this. And this is fascinating, is what this is.
All right, I'm going to the source.
That one says it's just a promo square. when you
Exactly,
hovered over
right?
it.
Right. Promo and promo. Look at that. Isn't that great? Ha, 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 ha. Isn't that fabulous? I know that's where it should be. And oh, you know what? I know what I did. Here's what I did. I was in social. And this is exactly what happened the last time. So we're going to go all the way back out is what we're going to do. This is a major tip. I'm going to have to move this away so that I can see what I'm doing. Okay. And now I'm going to go out of here and I'm going to open up my command again. So you can't go, what I did was I went from working on a social post to thinking that I was going into the magazine. You can't do that. You have to start again with whatever the medium is that you're looking to use. So you go into designs, and remember where we said create design. We have to do the magazine, even if you're going to send it as a link and it's going to be an electronic magazine, you have to use the print mode of editing. So remember that, that's huge. To find the actual version of your magazine, you go into the print mode. And now we're going to go to lead generation, personally branded magazine. And there we have it. So, and here's the home for the holidays. You see, it doesn't look anything like the one that I'm sending out. Is that clear? Does anybody have any questions about that? You have the same list of options on the left side, but you have to be in the right mode of creation, whether it's social media or emails or print. Okay. All right. So now this is the screen that you saw. I'm going to shrink this left side. And when you look over here, there are how many pages?
20.
20 pages. There are 20 pages because here we go. Because there are multiple front covers. So here's one front cover. Here's a second front cover. And here's the third front cover. And this is the one that I intend to use. So I just
click on?
deleted,
What did you-
and navigation on this is you go up to the little 3 buttons here, and you can delete the pages that you're not using. So scroll through and see which one you like better. And then delete the ones that you're not going to use.
But
You
Debbie,
have, yes,
how do
question?
you see- how do you see the pages? Like, how do you enlarge them so you can see them?
You click on them.
I thought so.
There you go.
Hey Debbie,
And
I have a
you
question.
can also make this, the view bigger if you want to, so you can see everything in it a little bit better. Yes,
So when I did the one, I don't remember which one it was one in the spring, but and then I published that, and then I did the one for summer, but I got a comment that you couldn't read the type because it was like in this light gray
yes.
font.
I think that they have fixed that. I went through and made it darker, chose a
I did.
different font, right?
I did too, but it was so frustrating, and I didn't know whether or not I had them all right.
I think that they have, this looks like it is darker, and I would test it out and send it to yourself before you do too much editing, right?
Mhm,
But I'm pretty sure they have done an edit on this.
mhm.
What
So
you're going, Mhm.
On page 18 there's an agent. What do we do with that?
Well, so you have to, so the point here is you cannot just send this out. This is your customizable magazine. You need to spend time on this. If you're going to send it, you're going to spend, I find that I spend about an hour editing and choosing the changing out the pictures. Remember, it's the same process that you used in the other types of designs. So it's just click on the field. Same thing here. There's the logo. Click on the field. It'll change your logo. Click on the name. And I always go up here and change this to,
Deb,
and then save the change. You just have to scroll through and make all of the
hey,
changes.
Deb, I have a question.
Sure.
Because like with my, and most of us probably, when we go to logo, it has just the plain, Keller Williams Preferred Properties or Keller Williams Realty, depending on which office you're out of. How do you get something, a different logo or an additional logo put in here into the logo screen?
It just needs to be a JPEG or a PNG, and you have to go into your marketing setup in Command. If you go into your marketing setup, you can add that logo, and that's way back in the beginning. Okay.
Okay, got it, thanks.
Okay. Yep. And then that will show up as your one of your logos. You can add the standard logos, the Keller Williams Realty. If you go back here, there you go. If you go back here to workspace, you have the standard ones. You have the bugs that just say KW, and you have Keller Williams Keller Williams, just the generics. So you can always use those. Okay. And you saw where I went. I was in my assets. This is going to be reflective of anything that you've done in the editing process up front. Workspace is going to be everything that Keller Williams has given you to work with. Right? So you get to read through this so that you know that you've edited where you need to. And I bring it up to 100% and scroll through here so that I can actually see it. And you can put a signature here, or you can put another logo, or I actually, it looks to me like that's just text. So I just go in here and edit right here. And I put my contact information, etc., and just do the edit. So any questions about where we are and how you navigate this? I hope your silence means you're happy.
Well, it means, for me, it means I know it right now, but if I come back 3 days later, I won't know anything.
Well, and here's the thing, the more you play with it,
Yes.
the better you get at thinking, now, where should I go? So I'm going to ask you, what should I do to change this? As handsome as this guy is, I don't want him in my magazine.
You
How
click
do
on,
I change that?
you click on it, and that's all I know.
Click on his picture.
Right.
Go to images and then
Go to-
hit the
go to
recycle
your
button
mic-
to replace.
go to
and
my
then I'm gonna go-
assets.
And then I'll go to images, right?
Oh, or you can go to your asset, yeah, and go to your
And
assets.
that
and
pops that out for me.
your
And
picture
oh, by
just-
the way, if I want to put a different picture in there, I can go add,
Okay.
and I can put anything. I'm going to see if I can come up with
Can't do it. How do I get to my computer pictures?
is that
Like, I don't see what you're seeing there. What did you click on? You went to images.
oh, that wasn't an image. I went to, I'm trying to find a picture, but I should probably just go someplace where I know there's a picture. You click on add. I want to put a new picture in here. I click on JPEG, this
man.
part,
Okay,
and that's a PDF.
got it.
If I go to here,
Yeah, photos, yeah.
there'll be something that's a JPEG, I'm sure. Come on, I don't need all of them. Just give me one. No, your
We get the
photo,
point.
you get the point. Yeah, exactly. That's where it is. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So you can then upload images from your downloads. If I go to download, I might be able to find something that I downloaded. Oh, there's one. I'll just put that in there. That's just a silly birthday picture. And then if I put that in there, it's the wrong size. However, I can change the size. I can move the picture. Oop, I can move the picture to within reason. I can shrink it up a little bit and then stretch it out a little bit. And there we go. Now I've got a little bit of happy birthday in there, whatever. So you just fiddle around with it. Does
How
that
do you
make
save that?
sense?
How do you
So
save
you-
that?
So you can see add, drag, drop, or click to upload, and then you get more photos. See, I've got this from a long time ago and various little pictures in there. Okay.
All right.
Hey, Dave, you had a quick question regarding because one thing that I learned from like the pivot shift calls in the morning, yeah, they always talk about being like the local economist of choice. How local should we get? So I'm based here in Stanford. Should I just focus on Stanford stats? Because I'm also a new agent as well, and I don't want to like, just get like bombarded with a bunch of information that I don't even know how to fully comprehend myself. So for now, should I just focus on Stanford and like maybe like Lower Fairfield County, or like should I do?
What the hell was it?
So I think you select the area that you are trying to attract. So if you're focusing on Stanford business, I would do Stanford market stats. I do my collection of numbers is Northern Fairfield. It's the whole county because I think that gives context. And then I do it town by town for the ones that I'm interested in. The question is, who is your audience? When he talks about local expert of choice, local economic expert, he's setting you up to create a persona that's helpful to the people that you're trying to attract.
And then also,
Okay.
so because Greenwich and New Canaan are like my neighboring towns, do they use their own MLS?
They do have their own MLS. You can get most of your stats from the Smart MLS. Most, Greenwich not so much, but Darien and New Canaan, pretty much you can get most of the MLS stats. I'll show you on this one. Let's go big on this page. Because this is a page in the magazine that's going to direct them to your what? What is this about?
Your app, your
Your
KW app.
Facebook page,
Yeah, this is your app.
my app. Oh,
Yeah.
The KW
And
app.
so you don't want to leave insert your personal URL here. You want to insert your personal URL so that they have it. I have it's just text. So you're going to go to the typewriter and you're going to put your URL. I have converted mine to a bit.ly link because otherwise it just has all these crazy numbers on it. So I will put bit.ly/ and it's called your HBG home search. And so that is, and then we've got to make sure the background there, see the background then expanded to fit the link.
Hey Debbie, another thing you could do is there's a lot of websites that you can convert a URL link into a QR code for free. So what I've
Of
done
course, you could
is,
certainly put a QR code there as well, of course.
and that makes it a lot easier for people just because like instead of
Then they
typing in
just
a
have
bunch of
to
letter,
Snap it. Yep,
exactly.
100%. If you want to
Oh.
do that. My point is, don't insert your personal URL. You have to edit it. You have
So
to
how
go
do we-
page by page. Mhm.
How do we know what our URL is?
That's also way back in the beginning, Jen, and I'll
Mm.
show you. Okay, so we have 10 minutes, 12 minutes.
Can I just ask a question on this page?
Yep.
Because this has bothered me the last 3 monthly, the last 3 quarters of looking at these magazines. On this
Yeah.
page, all that black squiggly stuff toward the top that I guess is decor. Is there any way to clean it up, get it cleaned up? Because to me, it looks like somebody's ink has blotted. Oh, that's it? All I have to do is do that? Okay. It just looks like an ink, like your
If you
pen
want-
burst on it
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
I know what you're saying. All you have to do is click on it. When you see the blue box, delete, and then it gives you a spot for an image, but just click delete again, it's gone.
Thank you, because I think it looks much better just plain white than
Yeah.
those squiggly lines.
Yeah. Yep, it's all editable, everything. So there's work to do on this if you choose to deliver it. And yet it's very cool. It's awesome. So here's we're never going to get to campaigns today. I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger and just show you how you can edit this directly from the KWLS. So here you click on the box, you see it's editable, ready to go, right? We're moving over here to KWLS, and I'm going to look up a listing. You can do this for listings or snapshots. We're going to focus on listings right now. And I'm just going to put, you can search by listing address or by MLS number. I'm going to put the address in because I don't know what the MLS number is. Avenue. And let's just see if that will come up for me. There it is. So you can see this is the listing, 16 Lafayette Avenue, Ridgefield. If I select this, it's going to give me all of the data from the MLS right here on the screen. So now, how do I change this picture? I decide which picture I want, and there it is. And I may want to make it a little bigger. Then this is kind of cool. How do I change this information down here? I'm going to scroll down. I think I'm going to scroll down. Nope, I'm going to click on listing details. And then I'm going to scroll down to the address. See, do you see I have the address highlighted on the page, on the magazine page? I click on that. Whoops. What did I do wrong?
I think you're supposed to click the recycle button, maybe.
Aha. You're very smart, very smart. We're going to get rid of that. I'm in here and I'm going to click on the recycle button. And there I put the data in there and I'm going to stretch it out. And I'm going to take out the zip code because I don't need that in there. It's just silly. And then save those changes and it fits better in that box. And you can go through and add other data same way. See the little price box? I can put the price in here and go, I did the same thing. You just have to click on the recycle button, not on the data that you're changing. Let me show you a featured listing page, which is, where is the featured listing?
Can
page?
you
I mean, I
use,
just have
so
one
can you use
question.
somebody else's listings on that page who want to have something if you don't have your own listings?
Yes,
If
you
you're from our
can.
office, from our market center?
Yes, you can. What I would say to you is don't use outside the market center, use only within the market center. Why am I not seeing the page? Is it this one? I don't think that's right. That's the testimonials. That's testimonials. Where is that page? That's so funny. There it is. It's this one. Okay, so here you can I love that picture. It's hard to get a better picture than that. But you can actually click on the box with the copy in it. And if you choose to edit that copy, we're going to find it. It's in the details and it's probably down here. Let's just go there. Property description. And that just changed all of the copy right there for you, so that now you have the copy from the listing. And all you have to do is, you do need to shorten it up, because it's usually the copy from a listing is going to be longer than the space that you want. But you can easily shorten it and take up less space that way. But all of the data is right here for you to use. And it's either in the photo section, which gives you all of the photos that are on the listing, or in the listing details section. And remember to use, when you're putting it in, remember to use that recycle button. Okay. I'm going to take you, any other questions that I can help you with on this design issue? And what do you think you will do in designs this coming week? Does everybody have a design project in mind that they would like to accomplish this week?
Yes.
Yes. Getting
Okay.
my magazine finally out.
You're gonna go ahead and do that, right, Dana?
Yeah, I need to
Hey.
do this. It's been
Oh,
on my
Deb-
to-do list since last week.
Okay,
Hey,
good.
Debbie, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So I was just on a smart MLS while you were presenting, and I noticed that the data only goes up to 7 days back. So should we just keep up with the data every day, and then once
No, you can, nope, you just put date ranges in. You can make the data say whatever you want it to say. You just have to work with date ranges. I don't use automatic feeds. I feed it the date range that I want.
Oh,
So you
okay.
can do a quarter, you can do a month, you can do 2 weeks, you can do a day, whatever you want to do. And I can show you how to do that a different time.
Mhm.
What I want to do just real quickly, we have 4 minutes. I'm going to just take you to down here on the consumer app. This is where you're going to make the pages for your website, and it's also where you're going to find your, John, it's where you're going to find your app link. So when you get to consumer, right? You see.
I don't even know how to get there, but
Well,
yeah,
yes, you do.
that's on the front
Yes,
page.
you do. Yes.
Yes, that's
do.
on the front page.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
This is, we start here at
Yeah.
home, but you just click on that widget, okay?
Mhm.
Now we're on consumer. See here, you have agent site pages, landing pages, and guide builder. Carlos was teaching the app today, and he said, you want to come in here on a laptop or a computer to do your guide builder edits. You edit right here on the computer. Don't do this on your phone. You're going to want to do this on your computer. Landing pages is a separate class, and I'll do landing pages next week because it's easy and there's a whole lot of application that goes along with it. So I'll make that be next week's class. But if you click over here on site and app settings, and then you scroll down, and then you click on URLs. Do you see this?
Mhm.
Click on URLs. There we go. And you scroll down to app URL. That is your personal app URL for you alone, Now, and you see how many numbers and letters there are in it. So that's why I've shortened it to a bit.ly link, or as John said,
QR code.
do a QR code and just connect this copy to a QR code. Here's a little tip for you. I go to see the home button here. I copy that link, and I have edited my homepage to have a notepad up at the top corner here. And I keep a bunch of links that I go to routinely right here on the notepad, so that I know where I can find them whenever I want them. And one of them, the first one that I put there was what? What does that look like?
The
So
page
your
of
app,
your app.
your app.
My app link. Yep. Yep. So how do you do this? You click on customize homepage, and look what happens when you get there. Whoop, only click once. It gives you the framework, and you can move all of these things around. So you can start with tasks, you can start with goals, you can move all of this around. I wanted the notepad at the top. So it's just grab these buttons and move the boxes. And you can organize that page the way it makes sense for you. You can take some of this out. You don't have to have all of these things in here. And I'll just click apply again. All right. Does that help, folks? Are you good? Because it's 4 o'clock and we need to give the floor to my buddy Rick.
All right, thank you for everything, Debbie.
You betcha. Okay, and if you
Thanks,
have,
Debbie.
make
Thank
notes.
you.
What I recommend is keep a little notebook for your tech questions. I have a little notebook where I make notes for things that I'm looking to find that I haven't been able to find yet. Or when I learn something that I just keep the step-by-steps in one spot.
So can we do setting up a page on the website another time?
100%.
Okay.
Next week, we'll do landing pages, which will include web pages.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Watch
you.
for the time. I'm not sure what the time is going to be. And I'm going to stop the
Okay, everybody have a good weekend. Sell some
Yeah.
houses, take some new listings. I love that. That's all good. So if you remember where we finished yesterday, not yesterday,
Thursday.
whenever we were together, Thursday, thank you very much. John, you look like you're like a radio disc jockey.
Then you got a nice little setup going.
I love it. Good afternoon, everyone. This is John Mendez with WREA, playing you all the hits. So we finished on Thursday with our pricing and positioning discussion, right? We went through the SPA, we went through working through some objection handling on all of that, right? Any questions that popped up as you thought about that over the course of the next few days? Because I'm certain that what you did all Thursday, all Friday, Saturday, and Sunday was think about what we talked about on Thursday evening. So anything that popped into your head about, should make sure we ask that, or, I wonder how this would be handled. Anything that we can answer before we dive into the anatomy of a seller transaction? Yes, Dave.
I think quickly you guys mentioned it. I watched that on a tape, but in your opinion, Rick, when a listing lowers its list price multiple times, does that, taint's probably a strong word, but does that really, cause that perception with the buyer market and the buyer agent market in that regard to really downgrade it, if you will?
Yeah, so I'll answer that without offering an opinion. Statistically, the answer to that is yes, right? And so when you look at statistics for properties that come on and go under agreement right away versus come on and have to take one or more price adjustments, the list to sale ratio is far higher on those that come on and just go under agreement, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And here's the reason why that is, right? When you hit the market in the right pocket, all the pent up demand for inventory pushes right to that property and allows for sellers to experience competition.
Yeah.
Right. When you miss that mark, everybody, everyone who's looking for a house, all the pent up demand comes and sees that property and says, not for that price. I think I'll wait or I'll move on. And now you're just waiting for new buyers to come into the market who usually come in one at a time, not en masse. Right. And so there's the reasons behind why those statistics are the way they are make valid sense, because you're creating an opportunity for negotiation instead of really holding firm to an opportunity for competition.
Yep. No, that makes sense. And when you're counseling over exuberant seller who is overvaluing their house, is that sometimes a point that you make to kind of say, hey, we could try to list the house at $75,000 more than what I think the market is for you, but if it doesn't sell, as soon as you have to drop it, then it's not worth kind of like that test thing that some sellers will try to put out there. Let's see what happens is kind of what I hear a lot when I talk to sellers.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stems from motivation, right? So if there's not a real motivation to sell, if the seller is looking to go onto the market just cause, and let's see what happens, right? That's not necessarily a strong motivation to actually be a seller. And because of what's happening in the market, we see that we see people coming to the table saying, hey, if I can get an extra 100K for my house, well, I would be a seller today.
Yep.
And what's interesting about that is, at least for the past 6 to 12 months, a lot of times they get to be right. Prior to that and moving forward, I'm not quite sure how much longer they'll get to be right. In a more normalized market, that's a really dangerous approach to being a seller. And when I say dangerous, it just doesn't create the results that people are looking for. That let's test the market thing.
Sure.
Frankly, my experience tells me that when you say yes to that without being really clear about what you're saying yes to, it just causes contentiousness and resentment between the parties, right? Because then all of a sudden, I've already listed properties. We had the conversation, right? Clearly the numbers were misaligned with what the market was saying. And 3 to 4 weeks later, you get the phone call. It says, I don't understand why my house isn't sold. Everybody else's house is selling. Like, well, let's review, right? What we talked about 3 or 4 weeks ago, right? Which is why having those conversations in such a way that they get to self-discover what the realities are. They get to have those conversations with you instead of just listening to you, right? Because when they say, well, yeah, I totally see that 625 looks a little higher than maybe what the market is saying, and yet that's what I want, and that's what I want to do. Well, then you get to make a decision as the agent whether or not you want to play that game or not. Right? I've said yes to scenarios like that. I've said no to scenarios like that. My no script is as follows. Dave, I so appreciate that. Trust me, if I could add a 1 in front of that 625 and put your house on the market and expect a buyer to pay that, we just do that. However, it appears that you and I can just need to agree to disagree on what the market is really saying about the value of your property right now. And so to that, I would rather turn you down now than let you down later. It was a lovely evening. Your home is lovely. Your family's lovely. I'm so glad we got to spend this time together. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what's fascinating about that script and about the activity that goes with it, which is packing your briefcase or kind of gathering the papers, right, when you're in the office, to kind of start to rise, to show people the door. I have found that to be one of the most effective scripts for getting people to really understand that I'm not kidding about what the data is saying to us and the concern I have about misreading the data. Because at that moment, then you have people saying, oh, well, so we're really done? Like, where are you going? What's happening here?
Oh, yeah. So upward power in sales is my favorite negotiating tactic.
100%, right? And what's fascinating is it works. And so then all of a sudden you get to have a slightly different conversation. I also would encourage you to rely on rely on scripts to help you through those conversations, right? One of my favorites about numbers being too high is the, I completely understand, Dave, that's where you're looking to go. I do have a small concern. May I share it with you? And Dave says, yes. I'm curious, do you know the difference between negotiation and competition? Right? And Dave says yes, no, or in between. Well, may I elaborate? May I explain, or may I elaborate, depending on Dave's answer? And then you use that objection handling script, right? That describes the difference between negotiation and competition. I gave that to you once or twice last week, right? And you always followed up with a question. I'm curious, based on your bottom line, which do you think has more benefit to you? Competition or negotiation? In other words, would you rather be the listing that all the buyers are fighting over, or the one they pass over to fight over your neighbor? Right? When you help them understand, see, the other thing I'm doing is I'm giving Dave an out. Dave kind of came up and said, look, I want 625. I am speaking. Please hear me. I have given my declaration of 625 to the world. I am seller, hear me roar. Right? That's kind of Dave drops that on the table. By giving him some additional information about things like negotiation and competition, I'm giving him the out, right? I'm giving him the out to say, yeah, I know I'm being aggressive, and yet the point you just made about negotiation and competition is kind of a good one. And so I'm glad you shared. This is all what's going on in his head, right? This is not him saying what's going on in his head. I'm glad you shared that with me, because now I get to look really smart by choosing competition. Even though that means that we may need to price the property at 589 in order to get there, right? I'm throwing him a life preserver so that he doesn't have to feel wrong. So many of those conversations are that. Let me give you a clean out here, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Right? By offering some concern. If you haven't written that down yet, you should write that little, I love, maybe you've noticed, I love those little prefix scripts. That's what I call them, prefix scripts. Like, how do you start a sentence? The ones I use a lot are, would it surprise you to know that, whatever. Or, I'm curious, whatever, right? I use those all the time. I use those in my everyday life. I use those with you guys. I use those in business. I use them all the time because they're great ways to open up a conversation. And when you have a strong behavioral style, right? Typically I like to just kind of speak directly and kind of bash people between the eyes with the info. And so softening myself in some scenarios is helpful. And those kind of prefix words help to soften me a little bit. And the other one that I encourage is, you know what, I completely understand. May I express a small concern? Right? When you use the word concern, guess what? I have noticed that sellers pay attention differently. You know why? What is concern about that almost any other way to start a conversation is not?
It's about them.
Them, you got it. It's about them. All right. Donna, then John.
So also, when you're doing what you learned on Thursday, that whole pricing, how you get to the price, I mean, it is magic. I wasn't here, but it is my favorite part of Ignite. And you've laid it out, you let them come to the self-actualization of what the number is. And usually, more times than not, they see their way to it because you presented it so magically. And yet we all know that there are times when, even though it points to 589, they want 625. And that's where the fun begins. And that's where you earn your stripes as the local economist of choice. And you really have to know what you're talking about. You know what the trends are. Is it going up or is it going down? We were surprised once, and that was last spring. But after that, there really weren't any surprises. We saw where this was going, and then we saw it level out, and then, you know, we'll determine where it is now. But because you're checking and you're knowing, you're not only looking at what comes on, you'll see what they closed at as well. So when you put it all out, and I'm sure Rick did this because he does it all the time, when you put the things out and you're at loggerheads on the price, and you sit back and you say, well, you know what? We've gone over I've brought you all of the facts and the data. I'd be happy to look at what you have. I mean, that levels the field in a way, and it's not snotty and it's not nasty, but it's like, so, I want a pony, but that's not happening today. So just to lay it out there and say, let's return back to the facts and guide them. That's where you show what, your true worth, I think.
I love that. I love that. You know what I would love even more? If you and I coordinated that in such a way that instantaneously I had Neil bring a pony into your kitchen. That
I
would
would love that too. I've been looking for that damn pony.
that would have been worth the price of admission for today. All right, we're gonna have to work on that. So you end up being correct about that, Donna. No pony for you today. Right, and where Donna started, I just want to finish. I'm going to put a period on the end of what she just said. What we went through on Thursday, it may not feel or look like magic. I'm going to tell you what, when you practice it and you really get good at that simplified version, that SPA version that cuts out all the other noise and really just focuses in on what the sellers are looking to focus in on anyway, all of a sudden, you look like a genius. More importantly, they look like a genius, and they attribute it to the fact that they're talking to you. That's really the secret sauce, right? Is that self-discovery makes them feel really awesome. And yet they don't necessarily, it's not lost on them that that moment of self-discovery came in a dialogue with you. Not with the Coldwell Banker agent or not with their neighbor from whatever, right? It came in a dialogue with you. So now all of a sudden they're patting themselves on the back and they're doing a little bit of that for you too. And now that partnership has started to form, right? You see how the power of this starts to carry you forward to, and anything else we need to discuss before we get started. Like, are you ready to put me to work, move forward, sign the contract, get, get started, sign the contract. Right?
One more thing.
Yes, of course.
And that's why it's so critical that you only bring 3 comps. You may have looked at 250, but really hone down on just the 3, because that means that you've committed. You said, yes, I have looked at everything, and these are the 3 best comps.
Yeah.
You really have to do that. Don't bring 5. Don't bring 4. And don't bring 2, frankly. Bring 3. It's a magical thing.
I was, man, I'm not going to be able to remember where I saw this last night. It might have been on 60 Minutes. Did anybody see 60 Minutes on, not last night, the night before? What was the last? It was either on 60 Minutes or, now don't laugh, it was either on 60 Minutes on Sunday or The Voice last night. One of those two programs that I happened to be watching pieces of, there was a comment made, it might have been last night, made by John Legend. It might have, or Ed Sheeran. It might have been Ed Sheeran, who was like the guest, whatever he was last night. And so what was said was, it's not necessarily about your skill. It's about the confidence you have around your skill, right? And he said that, I'm pretty certain it was Ed Sheeran, now that I'm saying it back out loud. I got up and I went and I wrote it, I went to my computer and I went and typed it, but I wrote that down because I thought, yeah, no kidding. That's like a life lesson. That's not just a business lesson or a singing lesson or a whatever lesson. It's not about your skill. It's about how confident you are about your skill. And what Don is talking about is bringing that level of confidence when you come confidently with those 3 choices, with that list of actives, with that short version of the SPA, with a focused clarity around what really works for them to achieve their goals based on their conversations and their motivation, their needs, which is different than their wants and desires, just remember, right? When you're focused like that, people feel that. It's how you know you're the one. It's how they know you're the one. And that comes from a level of confidence around how you do what you do, even if you haven't done it before, even if you're not all that good at it. Right? I have been known to say, and I haven't said it yet to this class, look, if you don't have a level of confidence and faith in yourself yet, well, then just borrow mine, because I have tons of confidence in each of you. And so if you just have to borrow my confidence in you until you replace that with your own, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. However, don't not have your own and not borrow mine and show up kind of weakly, right? Show up lacking that level of confidence. Because the way you win is you're confident every single time. Some of you translate confidence into aggression or pushiness or salesman-y type stuff. I can tell you that none of those things are the same as being truly confident on behalf of the client, right? Because it's always fiduciary representation. It's always coming at something from contribution. How can I help? How can I assist? And when you do that with a level of high confidence, game over, like game over. It's like the 1989 Tony Awards when Tyne Daly was nominated for Best Actress in a Musical when she reprised when she recreated the role of Mama Rose in Gypsy. It was like, call those other actresses and tell them not to iron their dresses, right? There's no reason to come to the Tony Awards that night. Tyne Daly is taking the trophy. And just in case some of you didn't miss that evening, she did, right? But it's that level of you're just the one. Whew, baby. You know what my main wish for each of you on this call is? That you feel what I'm talking about. Because when you feel what I'm talking about, there is a level of being unstoppable that has nothing to do with how long you've been in the business, how many listings you've taken, how many buyers you've sold. It has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with you showing up differently from the inside out.
You know what else happens when you feel that unstoppability? Because I kind of stepped into that this year. All of a sudden, you're not really tied to the outcome because you know you've left it on the field. You know you did your best for them. And here's the important part. You also know there's another one coming.
Yeah, 100%.
Next one.
Yeah, you don't have to be in that like hair on fire drama moment of, oh my goodness, I lost out on a listing. That's okay. We'll just get the one you're going on tomorrow, right? Learn from what you didn't get and then just put it in play for the next time. All righty. So let's do this. If there's no other questions on the listing consultation, here's my promise to you. December and January, once a week, I am going to start putting on the calendar starting in December and carrying through minimally January, once a week, some rehearsal time, some practice time. And we're going to structure that a bunch of different ways. I will get you the details and data on that. However, look forward to being able to actually practice some of this stuff, right? Because some of you will feel more confident if you've had the opportunity to say the words and do the do, you know, with the pieces of paper. Please note that we're going to start getting back into in-person practice time. So come on into the office, sit across from me. I'll pretend to be your seller. And if you read the script from start to finish and I just answer as your seller, then let's do it that way until you have some of it more memorized. Don't wait until everything is perfect, right? I'd rather you come and read it to me so we can give you some notes on the process because it'll make you feel better. For some of you, you're like, that sounds awesome. I can't wait to get at it. For others of you, that sounds terrifying. And I understand both sides of it, right? And what I would encourage is if it sounds a little more terrifying than exciting, remember, there is no such thing as courage without fear, right? So just show some courage. I don't bite. There are people on this call, minimally 2 or 3, maybe 4 of you who have done a rehearsal with me or watched a rehearsal with me. I'm the easiest seller that you'll ever talk to, because you always get the listing with me. My goal is to help you practice the process, not trip you up and try and find something to say that makes you, freak out. That's not the point. We don't practice working with jerks, because most people aren't that. And so what we practice is working with sellers who understand the process and who are appreciative of what you've brought to the table, because that's what I want you to expect more times than not. And when you say the words that we've given you over and over again, and you hear them in your head, and you hear me in your head saying, well, when Rick was a seller, this is how he responded, you'll be amazed that when you're sitting with somebody who's not me or not one of your colleagues, and they respond the same, you're like, oh, what happened? It's like someone waved a little magic wand, and we're right back to Donna's magic, right? All righty, enough said. So do watch for your ability to, that doesn't mean don't go take listings in the next 4 weeks. And it doesn't mean don't not practice until we get that on the calendar for you. If I was personally going to be around, I would get that on earlier for you, but I will not be around for much of November. So we will get that on for you in December. In the meantime, use each other. Practice in the mirror, practice with your spouse, practice with the cat, practice whomever, right? So that you get the words coming out of your mouth and understand the flow. So by the time we're working together in December, the flow is not what you're working on. Now you're working on getting it into your brain and making sure that you have objection handlers correct. All in good time. Nothing happens overnight. All right, so here's what I'd like you to do. We're going to pivot now to the anatomy of a seller transaction. And if you recall, that document is in the Google Drive for Ignite, which, if you need me to put that on the screen, again, I will do. Give me just half a second. Whoops. Okay, come on. Just a second, it logged me out, so I just need to log back in. Whoops. There we go. So let me grab that link for you. Pop it in the chat. So for those of you who need it, there it is. Yes, it's funny, Tama, because when I was saying practice with the cat, I saw that you were on the call. So that one was definitely for you. I'm glad to know that they're good listeners. I hope they don't give you too much struggle on the pricing conversation.
As
So-
long as we make enough money to buy cat treats, they're okay.
Well, there you go. As long as they know what's important. So I just want to show you what we're pulling. So when you go to that link, you'll end up here in this Google Drive. You will then go to right here, Anatomy of a Seller Transaction. So go ahead and grab that if you would. And let's work through that document. This is an outline of what happens from the moment you receive an offer as a listing agent to 30 days after the closing. So we're gonna run through this. We're gonna get through this in the 90 minutes or less that we still have available to get through it tonight, and then start. We're gonna answer any questions on the listing side that we may not have addressed, and encourage you. I think Thursday, right? I still have Thursday as the Know Your Numbers session. Be lovely if I knew my own calendar. Let's verify just real quick. So Thursday, yes, Thursday at 1 o'clock, Know Your Numbers. So don't forget Thursday, 1 o'clock, Know Your Numbers, and we'll address how you're pulling comps and where you're getting that data, as well as looking at the Brokermetrics supply and demand chart and any other chart that would be helpful to you on Brokermetrics. So come at 1 o'clock on Thursday. We'll get you through that info. All right, so the anatomy of a seller transaction. So here's where that starts. Right at the top of that first page, number 1, receive an offer from a buyer's agent. The very first thing that you're going to do is check to be certain that all the paperwork that we look to have is included, right? The good news, and I do mean good news, is that when you practice in the state of Connecticut, you have a reasonable expectation that the offers, at least a complete offer, is going to arrive and have certain things available. I am in the process right now of assisting my grandmother sell her condo on Long Island, and you know, her version of me helping her sell the condo is, Richard, you do it. Don't ask me questions. Just do it and tell me when it's done. Right. So as a dutiful grandson, that is exactly what I am doing. And so I've hired an agent on Long Island, since I am licensed in New York, but don't have an expertise in North Babylon, Long Island real estate. So I've hired someone down there who I've used before, and she sent me the offers. We put it on last Thursday, had a whole bunch of offers to choose from, and working through the documents. And I called her and said, like, where's all the stuff? Like, she sent me a little spreadsheet with an outline. I'm like, okay, but that's great for a seller. I'm a real estate agent. I want to see the document. So send me all the supporting documentation. And she was like, Rick, that's kind of what we have. I mean, I have one little form that somebody sent me here. And I'm like, well, where are all the disclosures? Say, oh no, that the attorneys handle all that. We don't get involved in that. Like, okay, well, where's a copy of the check? These are cash offers. Is there proof of funds? Yeah, she said it's coming. Well, so is Christmas. What does that do me now? I mean, it was just a bizarre kind of conversation, because there was just so little documentation. It was all about, here's the offer. And so now we've pivoted quickly, except said yes to somebody on Saturday night, and yesterday morning, got on the phone with the attorney to say, okay, draw up the contract, get that out today, because I want that signed and back to me by Wednesday. Because in New York, oftentimes without a formal contract being signed, you don't have a whole lot. We at least have some documents and some forms that people sign. Nobody even signed anything. There was not one signature. I said to the agent, you know, look, if they meet this, and this, I will sign tonight. Those are my terms to say yes to those folks tonight. And she came back to me and she said, well, I'll bring that to them, but I'm not going to say you'll sign tonight, because they won't know what that means, because there's nothing to sign. I'm like, okay, whatever, right? Like, why are we making this more difficult than it needs to be? So so be thankful that at least in Connecticut, when you practice in Connecticut, you have an expectation of some documentation. And here's what that looks like. You're going to actually receive a written offer. It may be on one of 3 different style forms, and yet you are going to receive a document, right? Written on either an offer to purchase form, which is what's used a lot in Northern Fairfield County, or a purchase agreement, which is used in Southern and some of Eastern Fairfield County, or a standard 4-page contract, which is pretty much used in Eastern Fairfield County and then the entire rest of the state. Both north of Fairfield County and east of Fairfield County, most agents, most of the time, just simply use a standard 4-page fill-in-the-blank contract. I do have a class on Monday, I believe, Monday at 1 o'clock. Let me just verify that for you. Yes, Monday at 1 o'clock, called Forms 101 Offers. So if you're curious about what those documents look like and how they are different from each other, the offer to purchase, the purchase agreement, the 4-page contract, and when you might use each, do tune in Monday at 1 o'clock, and I will bring you a full hour to an hour and 15 on the different styles of forms and how you use them. So you'll have an offer, you'll have a copy of earnest money, right? Generally speaking, what's reasonable and customary in our state? How much is that check usually written for?
1%.
Right, so 1% is exactly right. Understand that that is reasonable and customary. It is not the law. I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that you must write a check for 1%. 1% for someone who's buying a $500,000 house, if they recently did real estate transactions in a state like California, where you write a check for $250 to hold the contract, and come here and they're like, 1%, that's $5,000. And you're like, uh-huh. And they're like, really? Right? So remember that different states, different rules. The 1% is what is customary here. It's not set in stone. Donna Doyle.
Up in Southbury, I started working in Fairfield County, so I was always used to the 1%. But when I came here, they just want like $1,000 until after inspections, and then you give a bigger chunk. But I was like, that's it? Like, they'll walk away for $1,000, but
Yeah.
that's what they do all the time. And I
Yeah.
do it now too.
See that? And what's interesting is that I've actually gone the other way personally, right? So I just bought another property over the weekend for our investment group, and I write a check for 10% every time. You know why? Somebody tell me why. Why do I write a check for 10%? What message does it send?
They're a strong and serious buyer.
Yeah.
A strong and serious buyer, 100%,
Mhm.
right? Like I'm not fooling around, people. I have money and I want to spend it and I want to give it to you. That's the message I'm looking to send to the seller. So I write 10%. The last thing I did, because I really wanted to win, it was a $315,000 condo that I bought for my grandmother, and I put 10% down at front, or right up front, and I made it non-refundable.
Wow,
Right up front,
nice.
because it was the perfect place for my grandmother to live, and I know what the market's like, right? I'm a buyer just as much as any of your buyers are continually in a market that's moving too quickly, and I wanted to send a point, just make a point. So I wrote the check, I gave them the offer and said, all you have to do is sign it. It's non-refundable. If I change my mind, or if I walk away for any reason, because it was a non-contingent 4-page contract, you're $31,000 richer. Guess what? Guess who gets to move into that condo next month? My grandmother. Because I knew how to win in that scenario, right? When we start talking about buyers late today, tomorrow, and Thursday, we'll address some of that, right? You need to be able to give your buyers tools and strategies that will allow them to win. And sometimes that means that there's some risk involved, right? Anybody ever hear the phrase no risk, no reward? Me just writing a check for $31,000 as an upfront down payment and then backing that up with all these contingencies about how I could get it back, does it still send a message that I have money and I want to give it to you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? Yes, but not as strongly as making it non-refundable. Just sign your name and that $31,000 is yours no matter what. That spoke to that seller. That made her say yes to me at 12 noon the day it came on the market. I saw it second, believe it or not. I couldn't quite weasel my way in there first. And I said, if you want all these things, including my non-refundability, you have to say yes by 12 noon. So just remember that there are ways, that there are strategies you can use. Buyers have to be willing to do what it takes to win. And yet when I hear a lot of people saying things like, man, my buyers just keep losing houses. Well, I have to wonder, how aggressively are they playing? Right? How aggressively are they playing? It was spectacular. I don't know if you were in the investment group meeting yesterday. I know some of you were. It almost sounded like we had staged it. When Paul Leibowitz got on at the end and said, I had 2 buyers come to me over the weekend asking me for pre-approval letters for a specific property in Waterbury, only to find out that the reason he didn't hear back from them over the weekend is because someone else had purchased it, and that person was me. I ended up buying it for Command Capital, our investment group, and I just beat everybody else because I did what had to be done to make sure I won, because that was a property that we needed to own. Right, so I love that word, Marion. Boy, I haven't been called nimble in so long. I love that. So whether you were actually talking about me or not, I'm going to take it as a compliment for my abilities from this past weekend. And yet you're 100% right. Being nimble is that's a great descriptor. All right, I'm off on a tangent. So back to our anatomy of a seller transaction. Somebody's got to keep me focused, because we will never get through this today if I keep telling you 700 stories. So copy of the earnest check money. As we said, 1% is reasonable and customary, especially in Fairfield County. However, it's not the law. You can do more, you can do less, whatever is. Now, if you're doing less, understand that the conversation with the buyer could be, look, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what's customary locally is 1% of the offer price. My concern about you doing less than that, you writing a check for $500, it may send a message to the seller, or worse, it may send a message to the listing agent, who will then interpret that for the seller, that you're not as strong a buyer, even though that's not true. Right? So it's just about how people are seeing things. Perception oftentimes is reality. So just make sure that you're having those conversations. 1C, a letter from a lender or a broker qualifying that buyer for a mortgage, right? So some kind of pre-approval letter, or if it's cash, some proof of funds. And then any disclosures that exist, right? Most of the disclosures, you post them on the MLS, everyone signs, but make sure that you're getting a full package. If you don't have a full package from a buyer's agent, please note, have that conversation up front with your seller. Right, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I would just like your permission up front to be able to go back to any buyer's agent who presents us with an incomplete offer, that before I give that information to you, I go back to them and ask for something complete. Do I have your okay to do that? Right, there's no seller who says no to that, right? Because we don't want things piecemeal, especially in a market moving quickly today, right? If you're going to have 4, 5, 7 offers in the first 24 hours, you want full, complete packages so the seller can lay them out with you and talk about each of them, pros and cons, and then make a choice. So remember that your job is to make sure that those are complete. Check them. Make sure things are signed. Make sure the math is right on the spots where they have to do the math, right? That was my biggest pet peeve as a listing agent, when agents would submit something and the math wasn't right. Right? Your offer is for 500, except if you add up your 1%, your additional down payment, and your mortgage, it equals 485. So well, where's the other 15K? Right? Check your math. And I'll show you on Monday how I used to check my own math as I was writing those, to do a quick self-check on the math on that. As the listing agent, however, you're verifying that the offers are complete and makes sense. Number 2, please note a verbal phone call stating that someone is bringing you an offer is not an offer, right? So be careful about that. Be careful about what you do with that information. If Amin is my seller and someone calls me and says, hey, Rick, I'm bringing you an offer on 123 Main Street, and I get all excited and I call Amin and say, hey, guess what? Someone just called me and said they're bringing an offer on 123 Main Street. I'll call you as soon as I have it. And then I wait around for an hour, for 2 hours, all afternoon. I push off dinner because I'm certain that that agent is going to call me with that offer just any moment. And I start texting, hey, just wondering where that offer is. You know, I'm around. Hey, you know what? I'm just going to be in dinner, but you know what? I'll step away. And then you start making the calls, because now Amin starts calling me. Hey, what happened with that offer? You know what? I'm just checking in with the buyer's agent. You see where that's going, right? You end up looking like a dork. So here's what I encourage. Don't look like a dork. And the way you don't look like a dork is you receive that information and you get to say to that agent, you know what, that would be awesome. The seller has asked that we only present complete written offers, so please get that to me as quickly as you possibly can. And then I don't pick up the phone and call Amin and say, hey, guess what's coming? until I have it in my hot little hands. Then I pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, great news. And then we make arrangements. Make sense? Of course, if dual agency exists, the first step is to inform the seller that you've received word of an offer that's coming from inside of your office, and that they're going to have to consent to that before we present the offer, right? So for clarity, in our offices, we only allow true dual agency when you are the only agent in the transaction. It's your listing and your buyer. We do allow that. That's when dual agency exists. In every other scenario where you represent the seller and somebody else in the offices represents the buyer, we ask you to utilize designated agency, right? Where you're going to designate you as the sole representative of the seller and the buyer as the sole representative of the buyer. Let me ask you this: in designated agency, which is a form of dual, in designated agency, do full fiduciary responsibilities stay intact?
To the
I see
person representing.
a lot of head nodding. So that is good news, right? That is the right answer. Let me ask you this: in dual agency, when you represent, when you're again the solo agent, you're just you represent the listing agent and the buyer's agent. Do full fiduciary responsibilities still attach?
Mhm.
Yes.
I see fewer head nods and some less confident head nods. And
No.
I'm kind of glad about that, because the answer is no.
Oh, yeah.
When you are in dual agency, it is impossible for you as one
Represent.
human to represent exclusively the needs, wants, and desires of both clients. In dual agency, you actually take a half a step back. You recognize the fiduciary responsibilities of confidentiality and fair playing, right? Honesty and fair dealings. But for all intents and purposes, you become a facilitator in that, right? What one person knows, both people have to know. So just be cautious around that. We're gonna, when I'm back in December, we're gonna have a kind of a 45-minute discussion class around that, because it is something that happens more and more often as we get bigger and bigger. And I want you to be prepared for what the rules are around that. So just recognize in a designated agency scenario when, so great question, Marion. Marion asks, how common is dual agency? In a brokerage our size, we, and that is as listing focused as we are, I will say that probably 1 in every 5 or so transactions is dual or designated agency. That may be a little bit off. It may be more like 15%, but it's minimally, across the country, the numbers are, 8 to 10%. We're minimally 15 to 16%. My guess is that it's probably closer to 20 that we're on both sides of the transaction. No, not necessarily Connecticut. It's because when we were smaller, I didn't notice it quite as much. The other reason why I notice it more is because we actually ask you to process designated or dual designated agency if in fact it's anybody from the Ridgefield or Stamford market centers, right? So in other brokerages, each office may have its own broker assigned. I am the broker for both of the offices, and even though I represent the offices through 2 separate legal entities, because I'm still just the one guy, we think it makes sense to make sure that the public understands that we're kind of all one big happy family, even though the state says that you don't necessarily have to do that. If it's another KW office, like somebody from the Trumbull Market Center or somebody from KW Hartford, dual agency, designated agency doesn't exist. It's only where I'm the broker of record. Yes, Donna Doyle.
So for number 3, even though it's just, this says that you use dual agency if it's someone in your brokerage, but you're saying use designated agency for that, right?
Yeah, so this form needs to be updated in that
Okay,
regard.
that's
We
good.
used to only do dual. And a number of years ago, we switched over to designated for the most part, because that's how you were all behaving anyway, right? If Donna was on one side and Marion was on the other, even though we said we were in dual and fiduciary responsibilities were supposed to take a back seat, that's not how people were behaving. Donna was representing that buyer and Marion was representing that seller. So we switched it to designated because now the document described exactly how the agents were behaving. So then we didn't have to make behavioral changes. We just made a structural process change to the document. At any rate, the idea is you have to disclose that, and the parties have to consent in writing to that before you move forward with an offer. So as a listing agent, we ask you to kind of be the gatekeeper of that. If someone brings forth an offer and it's from inside the office, if they send you the whole offer, you need to take that designated form out, which should be now signed by the buyer, get it to your seller, get their consent, then get it to me. I consent on behalf of the brokerage. And once all three of those parties have consented, you move forward and present the offer.
That's something else we never did. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's something else we never did. We just present the offers and then have them sign the dual.
Yeah,
We
I'm
say-
sure that's
while we're
right.
presenting, we say this is from my office or whatever, but never beforehand. That's safer.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate knowing that, Donna, and it doesn't surprise me, right? I do know that from a designated perspective, we do tend to be a little bit more rule heavy than some other brokerages, and it's done completely for your protection, right? Because if you don't get written, by the way, the law says you have to get written consent from both parties, from all three parties, right? Buyer, seller, and brokerage before you present the offer. So that is how the law is written. We just happen to follow it because it protects you. And the way the reason the law is written that way is if you start to negotiate the offer and then say, oh, by the way, you have to sign this form. What if one of the parties says, well, wait a minute, I wouldn't have said yes to that. I don't understand wait a minute, what? Right? It's not a problem until it's a problem. And when it becomes a problem, it becomes a big problem. Just by the way, having experienced the no problem and the big problem, both sides of it. So do recognize that as listing agents, we ask you to be the gatekeepers of that, to make sure that even if a buyer's agent brings you an offer and there's no designated agency form, you need to push back on that to say, you know what, I think you need to get this form signed first. And they'll go ahead and do that. And then you go bring it to your seller and then send it to me, right? If it's a time crunch thing, right? Because sometimes people are like, well, by the time I do that, all the other agents are going to have their offers in and I'm going to lose out if you're worried about timing, you as the agents have the opportunity, have the access to the clients, right? So that can happen electronically. Nobody doesn't carry their phone around. So just shoot it to them via DocuSign and have them sign it. If me is the problem, don't allow that to happen, right? If you've sent that to me and it's time sensitive, text me, call me ahead of time, tell me it's coming, call the front desk, call the MCAs, they'll find me, right? Make sure I know it's coming. And what I might do is maybe I'm at the movies, right? And so what I might do is just send you a quick text back saying, you know what, if both parties have signed, go ahead, I'll sign later. But give me the courtesy of knowing about it first. Make sense? All right. Number 4, once you've verified all the paperwork's been received, call the seller and inform them that you have an offer, right? Not beforehand. If possible, arrange a time to meet with them to discuss the offer in person. If that's not possible, ask when all decision makers can be on the phone or on Zoom together and schedule that appointment. Here's the other thing I want you to remember. If you've received a PDF of all the offer documents and it's 1:30 in the afternoon and you call the seller and the seller says, yes, we can all be on a Zoom call at 7 o'clock tonight and not before. Unfortunately, someone's in meetings or whatnot. Great. Don't push forward on the offer documents at 1:30 in the afternoon and have an appointment for 7 o'clock. Why is that a bad idea?
You want to review the documents with them.
Yeah, 100%, right? Now you have 6 hours or 5.5 hours of them looking at these documents, pulling their hair out saying, oh, the offer is low, we can never meet that closing date. And they're just talking to themselves. You're not there to help guide them through the offer, to help them understand the pieces of it, right? So don't cause undue stress for people. What I used to do is if the appointment was 7 o'clock, I would tell them at 1:30 when we were making the appointment, that's great. I will send you the offer documents about 10 or 12 minutes before our appointment meeting so that you can open them and either print them or have them on your screen so that when we connect, you have them to review with me. Right? And every once in a while, someone would simply say, well, could you send them along earlier so I can review them earlier? And my answer would be, you know what, typically that is not the best policy, because I find that when there are questions about the documents or about the offer itself and I'm not there to explain it or walk you through it, it could cause you some stress and angst. I'd rather avoid that. So I'll send it about 10 minutes before our 7 o'clock appointment. We can go through that together. Trust me when I tell you, it won't change between now and then. Right? Numbers are still gonna be the same numbers. Number 5, review the offer with the seller. I know this sounds silly, this next piece. However, I want to make sure you understand it's there for a reason. Review the offer with the seller. Do this in an upbeat and encouraging manner, no matter what the price or terms of the offer are. You should probably highlight that or underline it. I can't tell you how many times I hear agents calling their seller clients. Now, in the last 12 to 18 months, this has happened far less, right? Because sellers typically are getting some happy multiple offer news. But remember, our current reality is not reality. We are in what I call hyper reality right now, right? Everything's moving more quickly. And that hyper reality is starting to change and will come to an end at some point. When I can't pinpoint for you. However, it will come to an end and we'll get back to a more regular moving market. Remember, somebody liked the home enough to sit down and put pen to paper and offer them good, cold, hard money. It doesn't matter where the numbers are and what the terms are. It's a starting point. It's a place to have a conversation, right? And if you call, so now I'm calling Donna Gilbert, my seller. Hey, Donna, it's Rick. So we have an offer. You're not going to believe this one. Now, I mean, don't look at me. I mean, don't shoot the messenger here. I'm only relaying what the buyer's agent told me. You know, and trust me when I tell you, when I got this offer from them, boy, did I let them have it. Let's go through it. And if you think I'm being like dramatic for effect, guys, I can tell you that there are agents out there who are letting their own feelings of disappointment about a specific offer or about a term, or their own fear about how to have these discussions with their sellers, that sometimes is what drives that, allow them to not be upbeat and excited about an offer. Remember, you're always modeling behavior. And so your seller will look to you to figure out how to react. For those of you who have ever had children or ever been around a child who has fallen and perhaps skinned their knee, what do you know about your reaction? Your reaction is their reaction. If they trip and fall and you go, oh my goodness, honey, are you okay? Oh my God, someone call an ambulance. Right? If your reaction is crazy and dramatic and oh my goodness, guess what? All of a sudden the kid's like, oh my God, she's crying. I better stop crying. Even if they're not really all that hurt. And if you kind of play it cool, whoops. You okay there? Yep. And they stand up and just keep running. That's your seller, just by the way. Right? So your reaction to the offer will feed their reaction to the offer. So there's no reason, regardless of the price and terms, to call and say, hey, Donna, guess what? We've got an offer. I am so excited to run through these terms with you, to kind of see your thoughts on it and see strategically where we go next. If you didn't have an offer yesterday, I'm curious, is the offer you have today better than the one you had yesterday? Right? Perspective, guys, perspective. We have to help people with perspective. I can remember one time somebody said to me, I went to their house actually to have a conversation around the offer. And as I was going through it, the person said, stop, just like that, stop. And I kind of looked up and said, oh, what's wrong? And they said, well, if you think I'm going to sell my house for that little money, you must be nuts. I am so insulted that anyone would even think of offering me that little money. And so I said, you know what, I completely hear you. I understand. I'm curious, could we look at that from a slightly different perspective? And they said, well, what other perspective could there be? And I said, well, what about the perspective that in the last week, 40 people have come and seen this property, and 39 of them decided that this was not for them and they were going to pass. One of them liked your home enough to stop, pause, and decide to sit down with their agent, put pen to paper, and offer you cold hard money to come and live here. What if instead of being insulted, we chose to be grateful? And then strategically had a conversation about where you expect the price and terms to net out, and allow me to go back and do my job with the other agent to see if we can achieve that for you. Would it be okay if we took that perspective? Because I mean, does anybody disagree with that perspective? Right? There are two ways to look at that. He chose, I'm insulted. Everyone's against me. Well, no, that's not true. Let's be thrilled. And you know what? Does anybody disagree with this? Isn't life way more fun if you're excited? Right? Let's just choose to be excited. So number 6 brings us through the idea of presenting that offer to the seller. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of read this through for you. This is my version of explaining and walking the seller through an offer that's been presented. So listen to it. If it's in front of you, kind of read along with me. Make some marks or notes, because I want to ask you some questions at the end. So pay close attention. I want you to kind of tell me what you liked, what you didn't like, what you heard. So reviewing the offer with the seller. So Donna, this offer is from Tom and Sally Smith from Pennsylvania. They have 2 kids and another one on the way. They will both be working down in the White Plains area once they make their move. They are opening negotiations on your home with an offer of $550,000. They'll look to finance 80% of that with a mortgage, and we have a letter of pre-qualification from Westport Mortgage for that amount. Their ability to obtain this mortgage will be a contingency in the contract. The other 20% will come to you in cash, 10% total at the contract signing, and the other 10% brought to the closing table. They've asked for the following extra items to be included in the sale: the pool equipment, the lower level freezer, and the play set in the backyard. Their contract will also be contingent upon satisfactory inspections of the house and the septic systems, which will also include testing the well water and testing for both radon in the air and in the water. They're asking for 7 days to get their inspections completed, and they'd like to have contracts signed and back to you within 14 days. They've requested a June 30th closing date. So let's discuss. What are your thoughts? Do you have any questions with what we've just reviewed? So somebody tell me what you heard. What did you like? What didn't you like?
Well, Rick, can you first tell us, like, what's the hypothetical listing price on this?
I don't know. Make one up. $625.
Okay. Now, what I thought, it was just very, unemotional, clinical, to the point, just went through every term, one by one, to let them know what, and I like that you started off by saying who the people are, so that the seller knows why these people are interested, like they're going to be working in White Plains, so, it's an easy commute for them then, and all that. So, they have a family, so but then you went through each of the very specific points, the offer, the dollar amount, and then how much down, and that they have the pre-approval. So no emotion though, so that the person doesn't get swayed one way or the other from how you presented it.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing Dana say is it's a pretty comprehensive, right, explanation, because there are some agents out there who will still call a seller and say, so offer number one is it's $550 with a closing date of June the 30th. What are your thoughts? Like, what are my thoughts? Like, where's all the rest of it? How's the $550 coming to light? Like, what are there contingencies? What are the timeframes? What's the, right? An offer is more than a price and a closing date.
And I think also, Rick, because you started off by saying that they had children, then when you say the closing date they want is June 30th, it makes perfect sense. It's the end of the school year.
Exactly right. Right. We're going to give them some information about the sellers when we have it to humanize the buyers, right? To humanize the buyers. There are some sellers who that's important to. There are some sellers who that's not important to, by the way, right? Here's the good news. When you leave it out for everybody. When you include it, those who that's important to will hear it, and those who it's not important to will simply just skip over that. Right, so make the mistake of including it and having it be less important for someone, not including it and leaving that information out. Again, if you have it, you don't always have it. Donna.
Would you ask for some personal information about the buyer?
You certainly could, right? I mean, I kind of look at that as like if the buyer's agent is really advocating for their buyer, they're going to do what needs to be done to make sure I have the info. As a listing agent, I would ask some questions in as much as, I have their names because I have it on the piece of paper, simply to say to the buyer's agent, hey, could you tell me a little bit about these buyers? The seller will likely look for some additional info. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Keep the question as general as that, and then just see what the buyer's agents will give you.
As far as their job goes, though, is that something you should try to get? Or not necessarily? If they're pre-qualified, they're pre-qualified.
Yeah, so I agree with that, right? So the mortgage letter or the proof of funds, if it's cash, that's going to tell me kind of where they're at. And as long as they can afford to close, what happens after that is not my seller's concern. So, right. So I'm going to be more concerned with their qualification from the lender. What else? Anything else that you heard?
But don't you have to keep the information kind of general about the prospective buyers too, so that you don't have to worry about crossing the line on fair housing?
Yeah, so let's have that conversation. Número 7. Be certain that you examine every line of the offer. You want to be sure to point out items such as contract language or anything else that may later come as a surprise to the seller, right? So you have 3 different versions of an offer form, right? However, if that's not enough, you also have proprietary versions of each of those 3, right? So if you receive an offer from an agent from the Ravis organization, well, you may have a purchase agreement that looks like an offer to purchase that they've added some teeth to by adding some language into it, and you're not recognizing that there's some teeth to it because it's written more like a non-binding offer to purchase form because it's a proprietary form, right? You may have a Sotheby's form that adds in or subtracts out something that you know is in every other form, the generic version of the form, but the proprietary version of the form either excludes something or adds something in. So recognize that as the listing agent, you just need to kind of put your eyeballs on it. You're not giving them legal advice. You're just pointing out, hey, just wanted to make sure if you're used to a non-binding offer to purchase form, please note this purchase agreement does have on the third or fourth paragraph on page 2, some language that says, once everybody signs this, this is a contract until or unless it's replaced by an attorney written contract, right? So you need to know the language that's in these and point it out to them so that they know what they're signing, because typically that you'll negotiate, they'll sign something before it goes to their attorney. And the only document of those 3 that has an official attorney review period is the 4-page standard contract. The purchase agreement and the offer to purchase don't have attorney review periods built in. Again, we'll talk about that on Monday at 1 o'clock for some more detail around the attorney review period. Number 8, work with the seller so that they understand that the offer is being presented, answer any questions, counsel them on next steps. And when I say counsel them on next steps, it's always about accept, reject, or modify, otherwise known as ARM, A-R-M, right? So you're counseling them that they have 3 options. At any given point in time, they have 3 options. They can accept what's been put on the table, they can reject it and move on, or they can modify it and present some kind of modified counteroffer. Right? From a listing agent's perspective, my experience tells me that no discussion, no counter is not the best strategy, right? Some version of a counter. Now, what's interesting is that in the last 6 to 12 months, some of the counters we've seen, right? The property's on for $625, the offer comes in at $595, and the counter is for $650. Right? There have been counters that are higher than the asking price. Can a seller do that? Yeah, absolutely. The seller can do whatever it is they want, right? They own the property. So recognize that market conditions will oftentimes drive a seller's response. However, I'm encouraging you to always guide the seller to have some response. Just saying no, it's like going to the park with your friend and you're playing catch, and your friend, you throw the friend the ball and they catch it and they turn around and they go home. Like, well, wait a minute, now we're not playing catch anymore. Now I'm just standing here with a mitt, right? By myself. That same thing exists when the buyer makes an offer and the seller says, no counter. All they're doing is presenting themselves as inflexible. And sellers need to be cautious around that, right? Because one of the things I know is that real estate agents talk to each other. And so the seller doesn't want to have the reputation of being completely inflexible. So guiding them toward, you know what, if you don't like the number, offer them $1,000 as a counter and throw it back their way. My objection handler to no counter in that scenario, so $695, so $625 with a $550 offer, the seller says, I'm not even countering that. Let's talk about that a little bit. I'm curious, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, had the offer been for $600 off of your $625 asking price instead of $550, what do you think you would have done then? Well, I might have given a little bit. Well, how much do you think? Well, I might have offered him like $615. Excellent. I'm curious, is there any reason why you wouldn't or couldn't do the exact same thing with the offer that came in at $550? But what do you have to lose? If you would have countered a higher offer at $615, why wouldn't you just counter any offer at $615? And again, I always then turned it back to me and then allow me to go and do my job with the buyer's agent to move that buyer up. I can't tell you how many times, again, in a different market, offers come in and sellers are like, oh, that's terrible. You know what? Good news is it's not about where they start, it's about where they end. So let's make sure that we can have a conversation and allow me to go and do my job with the buyer's agent to raise that number to some place that is acceptable to you. Right? How many times does that happen where you go back and say, hey, you know what, Donna, so we so appreciate the offer. However, just to kind of be in the realm of what is reasonable, the number is really going to have to start with a 6 or minimally a really high 5s. Right? Do you think you can make that happen? And Donna goes back and comes back and says, well, they'll pay $595. Oh, okay. Well, now we're having a conversation, right? Number 9, you may want to call the name on the mortgage pre-qual letter and ask some questions about the buyer, just in case there are any concerns about the program. Right? I also like to just kind of know who's writing the loan. And to verify the fact that the document, we just had this happen about a month ago. Somebody called me and said, so somebody presented an offer on one of my listings with a fraudulent mortgage letter. And I said, well, how do you know it's fraudulent? I said, well, because I called to be honest, this is what they said. Because you told us in Ignite to call the mortgage letter, the name at the bottom of the mortgage letter. And so I called the name at the bottom of the mortgage letter and said, hey, just checking in. I represent the sellers on a house that Tom and Maria Smith are looking to purchase and just wanted to ask a couple of questions about their pre-approval letter. And the person who answered the phone, whose name was at the bottom of the letter, said, who? I don't know them. Really, Tom and Maria Smith? They're purchasing XYZ property? Nope, I don't know them. I didn't write that letter. Can you send that to me? Just happened a month ago. So the seller said, thanks, but no thanks. So calling and just verifying is not a bad idea. Donna, did you have a thought?
It was just on the prior, the way you walk the seller backwards into presenting a counteroffer. That script is magic. I just wanted to point it out. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it is so helpful to be able to have the seller recognize that all is not lost if what comes to them up front does not make them skip down the street, right? That's not the business we're in. We're in the business of back and forth, right? That's how most people believe that negotiations happen, is that we're going to make an offer, we're going to end up someplace in the middle, or right. So play the game, encourage them to play the game.
Rick, I have a question also regarding that scenario. So
Yeah.
when you got your client to say 615, but when you went and spoke to the other agent, all you said to them was that you needed the offer to start with a 6. So you never revealed to them the 615 price, did you?
Well, so great question. I was actually kind of role playing two things at the same time. In that scenario, the seller would choose how I would go back. We're either countering at 615, or the seller is sending me back to say, you know what, there is some room here. However, we're going to need to be in the ballpark before we start really getting specific about a number as to where the seller is looking to go. And so it will need to start with a 6 or the high 5s, right? One of those two things will be how the seller chooses to send me back. If the seller says counter at 615, I'm not going back and saying you're going to have it start with a 6. I'm going to go back and say the seller is countering at 615. Also, please note, based on my conversation with the seller, there's not a whole lot more room there, right? If that's truthful and honest, right? There's not a whole lot more room there, and so the offer really needs to kind of make a big bounce in order for the seller to continue these conversations.
Okay.
To that effect. Yes, Dondra.
I had a question. I think I heard that you're not a fan of splitting the difference. Can you explain why to me?
I don't, so sure I can. I'm not sure that I'm not a fan of splitting the difference. What I'm not a fan of is the idea that there's only one way that in our industry that we negotiate, right? And that one way that most people believe is the way that things get done is there's a list price and an offer gets made and you kind of go doop-de-dop-de, 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 and end up someplace in the middle, right? And what I don't believe that's the only or the most effective way to have a valid negotiation. And so I have been known both in purchasing for myself and as a listing agent and representing some buy every once in a while, you know, one of you has a dual agency scenario where one of the folks doesn't want to be represented by you. They really can't be represented by me either, because I'm always in dual. Remember that, right? As the broker, I'm always in dual. And yet, there have been some scenarios where where I negotiated on behalf of the buyer. So that dual didn't go away, but because I was a different person, they were accepting of the dual scenario. So what's the point? The point is I've been known to counsel buyers to say, okay, look, that house is listed for $625. How much will you pay for it? What do you believe a fair number is? And they say, well, I'd like to pay as little as possible. I understand that. And yet knowing, hear the facts of the market, right? The facts of the market are that currently, if you're looking for some kind of a deal, right, that doesn't exist here. But when was the last time you sold somebody a deal, right? In the last, I don't know. I used to say that back in 1999 to buyers. So I don't know that things have changed all that much. If you're looking for, define deal for me. Well, what do you mean? Well, what's a value? What's a deal? Is that 5% below market or 10% below market or 20% below market? And so I'm curious, are you interested in purchasing a distressed property? Well, no, we don't want to do that. Okay, well, so outside of that, those kinds of bargains, those kinds of deals, would it surprise you to know that they don't exist here for the most part? So what if we found you an equity property that you wanted to purchase and then just purchased it? So what's my point? My point is guiding someone to say, okay, so the property is 615. Here's the market conditions around that. Here are the best 3 sold comps, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. Based on that information and the market conditions, competition information that we just reviewed, how much are you willing to pay if you want to purchase and live in that house? Well, maybe 590. Excellent. I'm curious. If I brought 590 to the seller and the seller said no and accepted a different offer instead of yours without coming back and asking you to make any kind of adjustments, would you be upset? And what I mean by that is there any additional room for you to add to that offer as a safety, as some insurance? Well, yeah, probably $10,000. Okay. So that puts us at $600,000. Do you believe that's a fair price for the house? Yes. Okay, and let me ask you this. If I brought 600 and they came back and said, we sold it to somebody else, was there anything else that you thought you kind of would leave on the table, that you left on the table there? Well, now that you say it, 605 isn't such a bad thing. The last time I did this, it was I forget what the numbers were, but let's just say it was a 625. The person went in at 610, and I said to the listing agent, look, here's the deal. This is what they're willing to pay for the house. So please don't come back and counter offer the 610. The comps support 610. She's willing to pay 610. She's a great buyer. She's well qualified. She'll close at the seller's convenience. So do me a favor, have that conversation with the seller and just come back and give us a yes. And the listing agent said, well, I don't understand. And I said, you know what? I have confidence that you can have that conversation with the seller expertly. Bye. And I'm not making it up when I say that she came back. It was somebody in our office. She came back and said, "So that worked." The seller said yes. Like, well, yeah, of course it works because it's a valid offer, right? Now, again, for those of you who have been in the market only have been in the business for only the last 12 months, you look at that story and think that he's making that up. It's not really realistic because everything goes for multiple offers 25% over asking price. Well, again, that's not real. You're living in fantasy land for the last 12 months, right? Eventually, that fantasy land bubble goes away. So it's not that I'm opposed to splitting the difference, Donna. It's just that there are other ways to accomplish the same thing and get people to a faster yes. And I would just love for us to employ more strategies rather than well, I want to pay $580, so I'm going to make an offer $30,000 below that because then I'll work my way up as the seller works their way down. What if we all just looked at the numbers and said market value for this property is X and I want to live there? Right? If you're buying for investment and you want to make your money going in, that's a different conversation. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about residential real estate, right? I'm talking about residential owner-occupied real estate. You're going to live there. Do you want to live there or not? There are ways to have buyers win, and there are ways to have buyers lose. What I just described to you is one more way that a buyer can win, because that you just help them understand that the market conditions say this. So if you're willing to pay that, let's just offer that. Why are we jerking around with numbers that are lower than that when you're willing to pay that? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Does that help, Donna?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
And I wouldn't jump right in and split the difference. It's kind of after you work your way there, and then it's like, all right, already, let's just be done.
But see that,
And sometimes there's a spot for you're here and I'm there, and so right. Sometimes there's a spot for that. It depends on the scenario, right? Not all negotiations are the same. Dave, and then Donna Gilbert.
Rick, what's your opinion on submitting offers with escalation clauses? Have you done that in the past, and how's that worked out?
I'm a really big fan of escalation clauses. As a matter of fact, I told you I'm working on selling my grandmother's condo down on Long Island. I was so disappointed that not one of the offers that was presented had an escalation clause. I wanted to play with the math and figure out who's going to have this cap. Oh man, I was just so bummed. Mm-hmm. But I love them. I think that escalation clauses make a lot of sense. You will find less so after the last 12 months, right? 13 months ago, it was far easier for me to say what I'm about to say, that you will, if in fact you use an escalation clause, you will run into some listing agents who tell you that they're illegal.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it exposes the buyer saying, hey, will some unscrupulous agents basically say like, hey, we know this person is going higher, so just try to get them higher?
Well, sure, but I'll go back to the main question. Do you like that house? What are you willing to pay for it? And do you want to live there? Right? If you like that house and you're willing to pay $650 for it, and your escalation clause says that you'll pay $10,000 over the highest verifiable offer up to $650, and someone can produce a valid offer at $640, right? They still have to produce a verifiable offer. So if their best offer is $630, now what Dave is saying is 100% accurate in that I have helped some of you work through all the numbers so that you can legitimately kind of figure out there's escalations off of escalations. And so if we kind of max everybody out and then take the other escalation clause and say, if everybody maxes out here and they're 10,000 higher than the highest verifiable offer, well, we'll just go and ask them to pay X.
That's my concern. Yeah, and even if there isn't a multiple offer situation, it's not like the seller demanded an escalation clause, but the buyer exposed that they're willing to pay more. You know what I mean? That's my concern, I guess.
Yeah, and so here's my thought. I wouldn't be concerned about it. And I wouldn't be concerned about it for this reason. This is a simple discussion with a buyer. If the buyer is concerned about it because they're concerned about paying X amount of dollars because they don't necessarily want to spend that much money on that house, well, then you kind of retool and say, well, then that strategy may not work. But if you're explaining the strategy that says, okay, so here's an escalation clause. Here's what that means. Here's the strategy. Here are the pros. Here are the cons.
Mhm.
Do you want to use that as your strategy? They get to pick that. And if they get to pick it, well, then nobody gets to be concerned because they chose it. They know the risks. They know the strategy. And if they win, they're excited to win, even if they have to spend their top, because they said, I'll spend up to $650. Right. So remember, and I'm so glad that that you asked this question, Dave, because there is a reality that we have to remember. Our job is to interpret current conditions such that the client can make the best decision possible, which is different than helping people obtain housing at the least amount of money possible, especially when a market is moving as quickly as it is today. That doesn't mean we take advantage of people. It means we have upfront, objective, transparent conversations about the pros and cons of certain strategies, about the pros and cons of buying in a market that's moving as quickly as today's is. And as long as you have those conversations and they're making the choices and they understand the risks involved, see, for me, that's when I take that concern off the table, because it's now not my job to be concerned for them. It was my job up front to help them understand what the concerns could be. And if they chose to move forward anyway, I'm just excited for them to now to win. Right. And it allows me to push and keep pushing them and anybody else involved to get that win, because they've already given the thumbs up to the strategy. Does that help with that?
It does. It does. Thank you. Have you ever done it when you're not suspicious of a possible multiple offer situation? Or is that really the only time you've advised or shared that strategy with a client as a buyer agent?
Oh, I think on the buy side, even if there's no multiple offers out there, there are certain buyers who, again, if they want to win, if they want to secure the property, right, that it could be a strategy that works well for them. I have used it myself. Again, I like the heavying up the down payment and making things non-refundable strategy better for myself, but I have backed that up with an escalation clause when I knew I had to fight for a property. Because yes, I am perhaps that rare investor who, yes, I pay retail and sometimes I pay retail plus for a property where the numbers work and I want to own it. I go and own it. I don't know if that helps at all, but those are my answers. And on the listing agent side, just remember that working with the seller to kind of help them figure out the math always makes sense. Always makes sense.
Can I just say one thing? Sorry.
Of course, Julie.
Sorry, Dave, too. I'll go in and we've had multiple offer situations, and I've always asked the agent, you know, if you're going to have multiple offers, is this the highest and best? Is this final? And then if it's not, sort of like, how are they going to handle this? Are they coming back to us all? And that really helps, because then you can kind of be like, all right, is this final? And then go to the escalation clause kind of thing.
Yeah, so Julie brings up a good point, right? Does the seller have a responsibility? So 4 offers are brought to the table. Does the seller have a responsibility or a duty to respond to each of them? I asked that question poorly. Does the seller have a responsibility or a duty to work with and or counter each of the 4?
No.
No, right? So the seller can choose to do that and go back to all 4, or go back to just 2 of them and try and work them against each other, or just choose one, right?
Yeah.
On Saturday with my grandmother's condo, we had 4 offers. I chose one offer. The offer, just in case the